If you're a film fan, there's plenty to look forward to this summer movie season. Captain America comes to the silver screen, so does the Green Lantern. And Kung Fu Panda, Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow, the Transformers and Pixar's Cars, not to mention Harry Potter, are back. If you're a film studio chief, however, this is when you grow anxious because it's going to be competitive, with at least 10 films with budgets of $100 million or more vying for viewers. Thor was the first, opening with a $66 million box office in the U.S. and Canada this past weekend. David Bank is a media analyst for RBC Capital Markets and a Bloomberg Best. David, welcome back to the Inside Track.
Thanks so much for having me.
It is a stacked schedule, shall we say. Which studios are best and worst positioned for the summer movie season, in your opinion?
Well, I think the biggest bets are probably riding on Disney from both a movie perspective and an overall franchise perspective. And then I think in terms of who's got the most at stake, I would think DreamWorks with Panda, because the company is a studio. All these other guys are kind of media conglomerates. Movie business is important, but it's not everything. With DreamWorks, they're in the movie business. That's what they do for a living. If Panda doesn't make it, that's probably a bigger issue for them.
And it's already a big issue because their stock has been headed in one direction lately, and that's down.
Right. That's right.
Now, other companies, however, we'll get to Disney in a second, have been riding high. Viacom, owner of Paramount, is doing great. We talked about it just last week. And they have a number of big films on the sched. We started off with Thor, $66 million. Is that a good sign for Paramount? And beyond that, a good sign for the summer movie season? At this point in the cycle, is $66 million a lot or a little money?
Right. Well, so first off, Paramount is a distributor for Thor, and Disney actually owns the movie.
Because they bought Marvel.
Right. It's a positive for them, but their distribution deal with the Marvel movies is going to end soon. So I think for them, the next big bet is really on Transformers. And, it's hard to see how they're going to miss with that movie. They don't have a whole lot of big ones, but that's a key one. I guess if it slows down, that'll be a negative for them. So, I think that for Warner's, for instance, they've got the last Harry Potter. That's another one that parting is going to be sweet sorrow for them. Likely to be a huge movie, but going to make a very difficult comp. So, to me, again, I think for this is really more about Disney than Paramount on this one. Was the showing strong? Yeah, I think it was a pretty strong showing. Remember, there's a secondary character. Who had really heard of Thor before this summer besides our 10-year-old kids, and maybe when we were 10 years old. It's a largely male-skewing audience. It didn't break through to across quadrants, I think, with female audience, but a very respectable showing, and probably helped by 3D pricing as well.
What does that say about Captain America, again going to allow Paramount the distribution, but the benefits largely accruing to Disney? And then beyond that, we've got the Green Lantern, which is not a Paramount Disney production. And also ahead, what will be a Marvel Disney-only production and distribution, The Avengers, which is in production.
It says a whole lot of stuff. I think, first of all, what really makes money for movie studios for these superhero movies is the toys that you sell. So it's had some success. We kind of think little kids are going to buy the toys. That's fantastic. The second thing is, what really drives more of the economics at this point than the domestic box office is the international box office. Domestic box office used to be about 50% of the total gross, and it's moving closer to a third. Thor is doing very, very well overseas. Fantastic story there. Captain America, I think there is some concern. It is, after all, Captain America. And the U.S. position in the political world right now isn't as positive as it was. So there are going to be some questions around.
So good story
America.
or not, Captain America may not play so well in Syria.
That's correct, exactly. So, but I think as far as the toy sales go, which is really what this whole thing is about, pretty big positive for them and a good start.
Let's go back to Disney for a moment, because they've got Cars, the Pixar film coming out, also Pirates of the Caribbean, both of them very big budget films.
Yeah, so, I think Cars is probably a bigger one for them, because on the merchandising side, Cars 1 was the largest merchandising story they ever had. We expect them to do something like, to them it's going to be something like an incremental $200 million, I think, on the merchandising side. So a very, very high margin business. That's equal to that could help them more than $1 billion box office. I think for Pirates, pretty well-known property, and it is probably getting a little bit tired. But for Cars 2, no reason why we can't expect to see a Cars 2, a Cars 3, a Cars 4. This is a really important franchise, a huge franchise for them, and we expect big things from it.
A couple of studios we haven't talked about, Sony and Universal. Neither of them has any of these really big films on the schedule. Sony, I suppose, if kids really go for the Smurfs, could make a lot of money there.
Right. Yeah, I think we also haven't talked about Fox News Corp.
True, we haven't talked
either.
about Fox.
And they just historically, haven't been recent huge franchise tentpole guys. Warner's, I think, is trying to start that with Green Lantern. We'll see what Green Lantern becomes. Could that be the next big superhero franchise? But what works is action adventure movies, right? And Universal, I think, has had that with Fast Five. They were the first big opener. But, romantic comedies, that kind of stuff just doesn't work really well internationally. It's the smash 'em up superhero stuff, and that's coming from Disney, Paramount, and Warner's right now.
I looked on the schedule, Glee Live in 3D. I mean, I can't imagine this cost a fortune to make.
No.
But given the fan following that Glee has, this could be an enormous moneymaker for Fox.
Right, that's exactly right. And that's what Fox is so incredibly good at. Targeted movies that don't cost that much, that do really well, but they're not the giant, with the exception, of course, of the two biggest movies of all time. They're really good at making profitable movies that aren't gigantic. So that's one of the reasons why we really like the studio a lot.
David, I need to put you on the spot, not that I haven't already. Before you leave, what are your predictions? Who do you think is going to really knock it out of the park this summer, and what's going to be the greatest disappointment?
Wow. Great. Well, I would say that to start with, the biggest movie I think we're expecting is Cars 2. Cars 2 could be one of the biggest kids' movies of all time. I think the biggest risk is Captain America. I don't know whether it's going to hit or not. Haven't really heard a whole lot of buzz about it, but that international box could be a little bit concerning.
And how about the sleepers? Maybe they're not so sleeper-ish because I saw some big trailers for it over the weekend. Super 8? Yeah,
Super 8, I think it could be a huge sleeper. It seems a little bit, I don't know if you've seen the trailers or not, but kind of a cross between maybe E.T. and sort of like a modern day E.T. almost. I'm not sure what it's a cross between. I think the issue for Paramount is, though, that all the Spielberg projects are going to Disney with their new deal with Spielberg. So even if it hits, it's not really lasting for them. I think one of the big things that happened that already passed, Rio being a hit movie for News Corp is a great thing because for them, they were counting a lot on that franchise, and they could use another kids franchise.
David, a great look ahead to the summer movie season from a financial perspective. Good of you to be here once again. David Bank, a Bloomberg Best. He's a media analyst at RBC Capital Markets.